One in five suffer.
Erase the stigma.
Brain difference is not a crime.
Mental health isn't just your problem.
It's our problem.
And now, Mental Health Mondays with Marla and Dave.
Welcome to Mental Health Mondays.
Welcome to Mental Health Mondays. I am Marla, and I am a survivor of Hurricane Ian.
Yes. We are so glad that while Marla has been doing just a great job down there helping her father, just so happens that she was down there in the midst of this massive storm, Ian, whose name I understand is already being retired, along with all the other massive ice storms. And for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, every year they go back and forth between different names. So this particular storm had to start with it was a male name storm. It had to start with the letter I. That's what I'm talking about. Anyway, we want to remind you to text the word GIVE, G-I-V-E, to 818-698-1021 and support our A Dollar Today Keeps the Stigma Away campaign that helps us raise money not only for the show, but all the other mental health endeavors that as Marla and Dave, Mental Health Mondays with Marla and Dave, are trying to keep under our belt and keep things flowing. Today and next week, we're going to share what we've been going through as our son has had another crisis, and we once again try to navigate an extremely dysfunctional mental health system.
Right. And so it's very difficult. I just want to explain to everybody, no matter how we make it look, it's very difficult to get into these types of conversations while we're in the midst of the storm. Absolutely,
because it usually requires absolutely hands-on, nonstop work just to try to keep your head above water. Anyway, we'll tell you all about it when we come back from the break. Don't go anywhere.
Don't you move.
When Dave and Marla get together. Mental Health Mondays with Marla and Dave and NAMI San Fernando Valley believe it doesn't take much to make life a little better for our neighbors, coworkers, friends, our family members, even our children who suffer with mental illness. When you support our A Dollar Today Keeps the Stigma Away campaign, you are doing your part to erase the stigma surrounding mental illness. For just $1 today, or $1 a day for 1 week, just $7, we can look forward to a future that does not include the unfortunate and uncomfortable stares, bullying, and the subsequent isolation that our loved ones who suffer with brain differences deal with. Text the word GIVE, that's G-I-V-E, to 818-698-1021 to donate. A Dollar Today Keeps the Stigma Away. Brought to you by Mental Health Mondays with Marla and Dave and NAMI San Fernando Valley.
Okay, as promised, we are back. And I just want to start off by letting you guys know that, it seems like a coincidence to me that Marla's down there in Florida and this massive, I guess as far as Florida is concerned, especially on the west coast of Florida, this once-in-a-century flooding type storm event happens, and it kind of coincides with how we deal with mental health in our family. And the reason why I say that is because of our son's specific diagnosis, which is bipolar 1 schizoaffective disorder, we're always just riding a spectrum or a wave of trying to help him manage that situation and manage it ourselves within our family. But every now and then the bow breaks, so to speak, and the storm just spills over and it becomes a massive endeavor, especially once he's taken into custody and then put within the inner workings of the system. And like we said in the intro, the system really isn't built to work. And I know that sounds crazy, but as I was talking to someone from the Department of Mental Health here in California, they said because the system is so overloaded, it is intentionally slow. And what that means is that if you need immediate help, They make sure that they trickle out the resources so that very few people can get through, because the more people that get through, the more you get faced with the fact that they don't have room for you, period. So because we have so little room and so many people who need mental health assistance these days, even when it comes to extreme psychotic events like the one that we had to deal with, and that we are just now sort of being able to wrap our hands and our minds around it without just being constantly in almost a PTSD level trauma in our family. Marla?
Yeah. You know,
Where to start,
the
huh?
reason I say, yeah, is because I'm not used to be truthful. You know, you and I deal with, we're very hands-on inside of our marriage with the things that are going on, no matter how hard they are or whatever. But I'm not used to you being the one who is emoting and speaking up on these issues publicly. So I was listening.
Well, I'll put
Anyway,
it to you this way. Now that you said that, I will address this before you get started. My personality, and Marla and I, while we've been married, we're great friends for quite some time, more than half of our lives. I will say this. When I'm in the midst of a crisis, there's no way for me to emote. I just got to put my head down, so to speak.
Put your head down.
Yeah, put my head down and just keep working, because the only way out of a hole is, for me, to just take one step at a time.
Right. So, we have a lot of very interesting questions as well that have been asked that we will address between this episodes 1 and episodes 2. But I think I first want to address exactly what David is saying. When, we use words all the time, and we speak a lot of really nice poetic things and a lot of little catchphrases, but there's so many of them that are poignant but true. Mental health is not something you can cure. Mental health issues are something that you must learn to manage, which just means that there's no fix, there's no inroad. And I think that just in our human nature, our goal is usually to solve a problem. We want to solve it. And, with DJ, the learning how to support and manage through the cycles started, to be honest, when he was in high school and he had a drug addiction problem, which at the time we didn't know what comes first, the chicken or the egg, that he was trying to manage a mental health problem, period. Self-medicating all the way through, because there were things that he was unable to talk about and share, maybe things he was unaware of with it himself. So, or
maybe just things he was embarrassed to share and didn't really want to deal with it with us. That's usually, that time frame of life is usually the time frame when teenagers, don't want much discussions with their parents anyway. They're really working on their complete individuation. And during that process, unfortunately, he was dealing with something that we weren't completely aware of.
So one of the questions that can lead me into this part of the conversation is, with as many crises as it seems that you and your family have had, why can't you tell, or can you tell, when things are going to become critical for him? And that's a great question that we should lead with, in my opinion.
Well, before we answer the question, why don't you bring us up to speed on the arc of the story for those who haven't been following your social media?
Okay. The arc of the story is that on Labor Day weekend, DJ was, first of all, he's been in a psychosis or a psychotic state of mind.
A building psychosis.
Right. So from what I can say, that for at least 4 months prior to the incident, at least, maybe 6, but for sure 4, because untreated, it just gets worse and worse. He goes deeper and deeper into an untouched reality by us, a place that we can't reason with him, a place that he can't really hear us to do anything that will accomplish normalcy, or to be able to get back into the fiber of our family and a community in the way that we can exchange safely information and understand each other. So he'd been there about 4 months, and when it starts, I always say to Dave right away, I can tell immediately. I feel like within 2 weeks, I'm like, something's wrong. is he taking his medication? And there's certain things that you can ask, but you'll never know. Because
Well, not only that, there's certain things you can ask, but regardless of the answer, there's certain things that you're unable to affect. In other words, especially here in California, it is you can't just put somebody out of the house because we have such a severe homelessness issue in California. There are laws that pretty much keep people from, make it very difficult for someone to just be on the street. That has to be just a conscious choice. And especially when you have someone with DJ's mindset when he's not medicated. He uses that as a threat, sort of something to hold over our heads. Well, I'm going to be on the street. Either let me do whatever the hell I want to, or I'll be on the street. And even then, when he tries to use that, that's not even something that he realizes, I don't think, how ineffective our efforts have become just with that one statement.
Right. So this last
you were saying Labor Day.
It's Labor Day weekend, and this is when we hit the pinnacle, and these things seem to always happen when David is on the road or not home or whatever the case is. And so the doorbell in my home rang. I was going to go visit with some friends in Marina Del Rey, and the doorbell rang, and my son has a key. So naturally I'm going to the door. And when I answered the door, it was him. And I said, D, where's your key? You don't have your key? And he lost it. Whatever stimulation is going on in his head, he started throwing B words at me, and basically, do I think I'm stronger than him? And just, it's a whole thing. So that was on Sunday. That was on a Sunday. The police, I went upstairs and let him know that when I come back, I'm going to have to come back with law enforcement because, I can't have another fist fight with you. And so when I literally left and came back, my brain says, go ahead and call the police and have them meet you at the house. And now the police the plan, according to what they wanted to do, was to get me to go into a hotel. And I'm going to tell you how that turned out when we get back.
It's time for the Mental Health Minute with Marla and Dave.
When it comes to mental health, many people believe that therapy and self-help aren't necessary, when a simple prescription or a pill will suffice. The fact is, specific treatment for mental health problems varies depending on the individual and could include medication, therapy, and in many cases both, according to mentalhealth.gov.
Many individuals choose to build and work with a support system during the healing and recovery process. Having a good support system and engaging with trustworthy people are key elements to successfully talking about your own mental health, and is often the first step to helping you heal, grow, and recover.
A support system can include a trained mental health professional, a parent or family member, or family members, a teacher, and or a faith leader.
When building a support system, remember, in addition to good advice, look for someone who can assist you in taking action that will help.
This message is brought to you by Mental Health Mondays with Marla and Dave.
I never do anything without thinking about it first.
Marla is a feeler.
I basically live my personality on my sleeve.
But when Marla and Dave get together, it's like a match dancing with a firecracker.
Right before you pick back up on the storyline, I want to just sort of make an addendum to something that you said earlier, specifically based on the information that we just had in the Mental Health Minute. Not all mental health issues are unable to be dealt with in a way that you can get healing. Healing can come from some mental health issues, but there are others where, like Marla said, specifically the ones that we're dealing with in our family, there's no cure for those issues. So there's no cure for some, and there are cures for others. So it just happens that with bipolar 1 and schizoaffective disorder, there is no actual cure, just ability, and you have to learn how to deal with it, like Marla said. Go ahead, Marla. I'm sorry.
So just to finish the story, and I'm going to point out a couple of really important things as I go along. Knowing that before I left home that there was a violent threat that was verbally posed, and he was imposing himself. We didn't have a physical confrontation this time, but you know it's coming. It is the first line of defense is safety. So for those of you who feel like, and it is tough, I'm going to tell you, as a Black parent, it is tough knowing what the response usually is to actually call the police on your own child, but it's still necessary, because what good does it do if DJ's dead or I'm dead? So I have to call the police and then properly inform them. So the police, it was the holiday weekend, and they were desperately trying to let me know this is Labor Day weekend.
There's no help coming.
Exactly. The psychological evaluation team is not here for us. They were on the phone calling six officers, 3 police, 3 squad cars. And they finally said, I tell you what, we'll walk you in your house and you can get your belongings and go to a hotel. Can you do that? Sure. And when we got in the house and we realized that DJ had taken off all the doorknobs and all the hardware on all of our interior doors. And what it turned out to be is we looked up and unfortunately, Dave and I are responsible Second Amendment people, and our firearms that are kept in a safe, a single safe by our bedside, had been taken. The safes were gone and the guns were gone. So now we've got a whole different issue, which essentially escalated. They did recover the weapons, but that looped DJ into a situation where generally the request is for the police to take him to the hospital and hospitalize him on a 5150 so he can begin medication that is involuntary. Normally, you must volunteer to take your medication, but when you're on a 5150, that choice,
those rights are suspended. You're in such need of stabilization. They take that choice away and stabilize you, and then reissue the choice.
Right. So at that point, the police decided, the one sergeant decided the best thing to do was just to arrest him.
Now I'm going to stop you right there, Marla. I'm going to stop you right there. And again, this is part of the broken down system. First of all, police don't need to be, they're not doctors, they're not psychiatrists, they're not therapists. They have pretty much one option when they show up and keep things from getting out of hand by force.
Well, they're there to protect and serve.
Exactly.
That's what they're there for. They're not there to counsel and guide.
Exactly. And what Marla said at the beginning, when the police got there, they already knew that they weren't going to be able to get the mental health support even that they needed. And so basically their only option was, well, there's nothing we can do about it. Let's just get you out of here. Go ahead.
So they put him on a hold, and we had to, no one responded to us. We looked online, Lexi did, but as a matter of fact, our daughter, and the next day found him booked in the Van Nuys jail.
And it wasn't necessarily 5150. They said that they were going to put him on a 5150.
It was criminal. He was booked on a felony charge of
grand theft with a weapon.
For firearms.
Yeah.
Which I told the police that, first of all, you've recovered the weapons. He's not a criminal. I'm not going to press the charges. Obviously, if violence was something that he was prone to do, he'd have found a way to try to open the safe or sold the guns or whatever the case. He threw them in the trash can. So that there's something to be said for that in just the process. But the issue here was that was the most expedient thing for the police to do to make it better for them at that moment. So DJ then was really, all the charges couldn't stand. He was released on his own recognizance on Tuesday.
Without letting us know. No communication.
Door, which is a live video that I thought to record. I shocked out of my mind watching tennis, and here he comes, and he was still completely psychotic, and nothing had been done. And he walked in and said, "I'm calling the police on you." Oh, you okay? Well, perfect, good. The police are coming back. So when they came back, they were able to engage on, this was on a Tuesday, the PET team, which is psychiatric extraction team. And they did come to the house along with the officers, and they did deem, based on the discussion we had and the documentation that they could witness, that he was in a situation, in a state of mind where he needed to be hospitalized. And I think that that's super important as well. And I went online, and I'll say it here again. I'm always going to share the experience of what is working, what doesn't work in a very broken system. Document, document, document. You don't have to do documentation. Doesn't mean social media, social media, social media. It means you might need to turn on your camera or voice recorder or something, because you're not dealing with people who are unintelligent. You're dealing with people who are in a psychosis, but they're smart. And so if I had not had proof of the behaviors I was speaking about that were so odd and obscure that he's only going to do with me. Several people who joined me online were saying, why didn't you just stop talking to him? Like, don't say anything. You don't understand that I need to be able to literally, there's a certain amount of conversation. I'm a trigger that I need him to converse, because I need to be able to show this to the people, the authorities that matter, that say, look, this is the interaction. This is the exchange between the two of us. He's not well. So without that, they would have left him at home. I was literally congratulated by the mental health team that came, and she said, man, if it were not for this, we consider your son a wobbler, which that term, I guess, meant that you can tell that some things are word salad, but the rest of it is coherent enough, and the things that he's saying, would not have us take the aggressive step to hospitalize him without your documentation and conversation.
Yeah, the one thread of common denominator amongst all of our children is they're all extremely intelligent, and so even when their logical side of their brain is a little bit diminished, and they're operating on information that is not really in reality that the rest of us deal with. They understand that, something dangerous is about to happen. Let me try to pull myself together in an episode. And so then from the people from the outside looking in, it could look like it's not as extreme as we're saying that it is. Soon as those lights go off and that attention is taken off, it's right back to extreme threats, an extremely, basically an unlivable, untenable situation. And especially when you have a grown man, our son is 33 years old, and I'm out of town, and Marla's home by herself. That is... Immediately, we were having internal family discussions when we were deciding on how Marla should handle things, and I was like, really, safety all the way first, and for any reason, and regardless of what the cost may be. So, and we have to take another break. So we're going to finish telling you the story, and then we'll get next week, because we're going to keep recording, and you'll hear the rest of our conversation for next week. But we'll do some of those questions next week. We'll be right back. We're going to take a break, and then we'll continue with the story. All right. It is very difficult to switch from the weightiness of the material that the conversation we were just having, and then go straight to poll time when Marla is actually doing the dance. I was going to suspend the dance this week, but Marla is dedicated. Our poll question last week was, what percentage of all global diseases are either mental, neurological, or substance abuse disorders? Our guest last week was Debbie Jester. Yes. And she was 2 for 2.
It was amazing, and she got it right.
Yes, your options were 3%, 7%, or 10%, and the answer was ding, ding, ding. 10% of all global diseases are either mental, neurological, or substance abuse disorders.
Correct.
Marla, what's the question for next week?
That we'll be asking is, what percentage of adults in the U.S. experience a serious mental illness in a given year? 4%, 10%, or 16%? What percentage of adults in the United States experience a serious mental illness in a given year? 4, 10, or 16?
Now, you know, those of you who are Mental Health Mondays with Marla and Dave addicts, you know that we can't give the answer out this week. So follow our social media, Mental Health Mondays with Marla and Dave. The question will be there. You get your chance to weigh in there. And next week, we will tell you what the correct answer is. Remember, text the word GIVE, GIVE, to 818-698-1021. $1 today keeps the stigma away. Go. All right, Marla, right quick, try to wrap up the story so we can actually get to...
To wrap the story up, DJ was then hospitalized. He was put on a 5150, which for those who don't know is 72 hours of a mandatory hold. Within that 72 hours, he was evaluated, and 2 psychiatrists have to evaluate, have a conversation. He was transferred to another hospital, and he was placed on a 5250, which is a 14-day hold, and which he was released after 6 days.
And he was deemed during that time, their assessment was that he was in a psychosis, and that he was violently aggressive.
And they also decided that they would release him, which we'll leave with this, and this is again where the system is broken, not because he received the full course of treatment that he needed to be fully stabilized, but because his insurance policy does not pay for him to be in care longer than 6 days. And so, So it's not about whether he is being treated appropriately and whether we're working on the issue medically, which he needed medical intervention, but it's how much money can I make? And if I can't make the money, then get the hell out of here.
Now, I'm going to also stop Marla right there and also say this. Without actually, and I don't know if it's okay for me to get explicit with names, but they also added things to his diagnosis and their evaluation so that they can place him where they wanted him placed. And we're a God-fearing household, and as God would have it, that didn't stick. At the time, it felt like an extreme sort of emergency and just another failure of the system. And though it was a failure of the system, God used that to our benefit and to DJ's benefit. And I'll say this: they put him in a home, into a residential, treatment center, basically for alcoholics and addicts. And that's really not DJ's issue. And so they had to add that. And they kept telling me on the phone that they had done blood work. Well, it wasn't until way after. And matter of fact, when he got there, they didn't take him because he wasn't. And because of his level of mental health needs that they could not address, they released him from the hospital to this place, and the place kicked him out onto the street. And suddenly, by the time, and it was so far from our house that by the time I got down there, for 2.5, 3 days, we had no idea where our son was.
Correct. And so I'm going to leave with this because we're going to start getting into your Q&A. We are raising funds. Our minimum fundraising need is $18,000 just to be able to continue care for our son. Please donate to lovingbeyondreason.org. There's a Loving Beyond Reason PayPal. Pass it, share it around. The more people that get involved and do a little can go a long way. And a few people versus going and asking a few people to do a lot. This is help that is desperately needed because the care that he needs is it's unaffordable. And there's no program right now that is going to be able to allow us to be able to subsidize any of these fees and costs, and we just literally can't afford it. So keep that in mind, and I'm on the march now to not just do this for our family, but for other families, and my goal is to try to actually change the healthcare system, and I'm going to do it from the ground up. So get ready, Los Angeles, because I'm organizing, and we're going door to door. We're going to get a petition signed, and we need to get this healthcare situation changed immediately. Yeah. And so that's it. So thank you guys for tuning in.
We're going to
Don't forget-
continue the discussion, but you'll be able to hear part 2 next week. Unfortunately, this is an ongoing struggle, not just for our families, but for many people in the United States, worldwide, actually. We just, in our poll questions, we're having fun, but that's really serious information. These issues are impacting people around the world. And as we as human beings continue to neglect problems and push things off, like climate change or like the medical insurance / whether this is a mental health issue or whether this is a firearm issue, the more we push those things back, the worse they get, because you have to address it, because they continue to impact us, and it becomes a cumulative issue, sometimes exponentially. And by the time you get around to it, it's way more of a problem than if you had just addressed it right the first time. And so that's really our goal here at Mental Health Mondays with Marla and Dave. That is our goal with Love and Beyond Reason. That is also why we partnered with the most impactful mental health organization in the United States, and that's NAMI. We're proud to be partnered with NAMI San Fernando Valley. Marla, what else?
I just have to tell you this. I'm going to make it simple. You can have the most expensive car with the baddest interior, 24-karat gold dashboard, and amazing tires, but if the engine is broken, it drives nowhere. We got to begin to take care of this. We're neglecting the very thing that will cause us to actually be able to move our lives forward. If the engine is broken, the car does not have value. Well said. And we will continue the discussion like we said, and we'll see you guys next week. Bye.